The Steppes Before the Storm, the early life of Temüjin. Before he became Genghis Khan, the most powerful conqueror the world had ever known, he was simply a child named Temüjin, born into a world where survival was a battle fought every single day. The endless Mongolian steppe, harsh and unforgiving, shaped the character of every person who lived upon it. And it was in this land of wind, hunger, and war that a legend began to form. Temüjin was born around 1162, the son of Yassa Code, a respected but not unchallenged noble of the Borjigin clan. His tribe, like all others on the steppes, lived by the bow, the horse, and the promise of loyalty. But alliances were fragile, betrayals common, and death always close. When Temüjin was only 9, his father betrothed him to the daughter of another tribe, beginning a political bond that would influence his life deeply. But fate turned dark too quickly. On the way back from delivering his son to the future in-laws, Yassa Code was poisoned by enemies. Temüjin was called back, but when he returned, everything had changed. The tribe abandoned the family. According to the brutal laws of the steppe, a leader's sons meant nothing without the strength of the leader himself. Temüjin, his mother Hoelun, and his siblings were cast out, left alone to survive in the wild. These were years of hunger, hardship, and humiliation. The young Temüjin learned to live by catching fish from frozen rivers, digging roots from the earth, and defending his family from wolves and rival clans. What should have broken him instead forged him into steel. Even as a boy, he showed something no other child on the steppe possessed: the ability to inspire loyalty. Despite having nothing, he formed deep bonds with future companions, Jelme, Bo-Orchu, and others, who would one day help him conquer nations. Yet darkness followed him. Conflict with his half-brother Bekter ended when Temüjin, forced to choose between domination and survival, killed him with his own hands. It was a violent moment, but a turning point. Temüjin would never again submit to anyone. From abandonment to starvation, from betrayal to bloodshed, the steppe tested him endlessly. But Temüjin was not simply surviving. He was learning, he was watching, and he was preparing for the unimaginable destiny waiting ahead. In the vast emptiness of the Mongolian plains, a storm was gathering, a storm that would reshape the world. And at the center of it stood a boy, who would soon become Genghis Khan. The rise of a leader, captivity, escape, and the birth of resolve. After years of struggling in exile, Temüjin grew into a young man marked by hardship, but driven by an unbreakable will. The steppe had shaped him. Its cruelty had carved strength into its bones, and its loneliness had sharpened his mind. But fate was not yet finished testing him. One night, when Temüjin was still in his early teens, the Taichiud clan, rivals who saw potential danger in him, captured him. He was bound in a heavy wooden kangi, a punishing device meant to break the spirit of any prisoner. For most young men, this would have meant the end. But for Temüjin, it was the beginning of a transformation. Even as a captive, he watched, learned, and waited. He studied the guards, the routines, the weaknesses in the camp. And he saw something else: fear. They feared what he might one day become. Opportunity came in the form of a single moment. During a chaotic night watch, Temüjin used the terrain and darkness to escape, disappearing into the riverside reeds, with the help of a sympathetic Taichiud guard who saw greatness in the boy. Temüjin slipped away into the wilderness. His escape became a turning point. It was no longer enough to survive. Temüjin understood something deeper. The world belonged not to those born strong, but to those who chose strength through will. Captivity had not broken him. It had forged within him an iron resolve. Returning to his scattered family, Temüjin began to gather allies, not by fear, as many steppe leaders did, but through loyalty and trust. He made promises and kept them. He rewarded those who helped him. And most importantly, he treated common herders and warriors with the same respect as nobles. This idea, revolutionary on the steppe, attracted followers from every clan. Soon he reunited with Berta, his betrothed. Their bond became a personal anchor in the chaos of tribal politics. But their peace was short-lived. One night, the Merkit clan raided Temujin's camp, seeking revenge for an old grudge. Berta was taken. For Temujin, this was more than a tragedy. It was a declaration of war. In desperation and fury, he sought help from two rising powers on the steppe: Jamuka, his childhood blood brother, and Togrul, the Kiryat Khan. Together, the three men launched a campaign to rescue Berta. Their combined forces overwhelmed the Merkits, and Berta was brought safely back. This victory strengthened Temujin, but it also shifted the balance of power on the steppe. Leaders took notice. Enemies began to whisper. Friends began to calculate. The boy who had once starved in the snow was now forging alliances that could shake the foundations of every tribe. The steppe was watching. A leader was rising. Temujin's first battles, forging a name on the steppe. By his late teens, Temujin had begun to emerge as a formidable figure on the Mongolian steppe. His reputation was built not only on courage, but also on strategy, loyalty, and a vision few could comprehend. The tribes around him were fractured, ruled by fear and personal ambition. But Temujin understood that survival and dominance required more than brute force. The first test of his leadership came in the form of a minor skirmish with a neighboring clan. What seemed a routine dispute over grazing rights quickly escalated into a life-and-death confrontation. Many young warriors would have fled or panicked. Temujin, however, assessed the battlefield, marshaled his followers, and turned the tide with a combination of precise archery, coordinated cavalry charges, and unbreakable discipline. The victory was small but significant. It was proof that he could lead, and that those who followed him could trust his judgment. But leadership was never just about winning battles. Temujin faced betrayal at every turn. Allies would switch sides if the winds of fortune favored another. Enemies would seek revenge for perceived slights. And within his own extended family, jealousy simmered. Every challenge, every threat, and every personal loss forced Temujin to adapt, to think ahead, and to inspire loyalty in a world where betrayal was often easier than friendship. During this time, he also began to implement a principle that would define his leadership: merit over birthright. Warriors were rewarded based on skill, bravery, and loyalty, not merely on the status of their clan or family. This radical idea attracted talented individuals from every corner of the steppe, uniting men who otherwise would have remained rivals. Temujin's camp became a place where capability, not lineage, determined rank, a revolutionary approach that would soon give him a decisive advantage. As he grew in strength and reputation, Temujin also cultivated alliances. One of the most important was with Togrul, the Khan of the Kiryat tribe, a relationship that would prove both beneficial and complicated in the years to come. Through these alliances, Temujin expanded his influence, secured resources, and positioned himself for greater conquests. The steppe, vast and merciless, watched as a boy transformed into a leader whose name would eventually echo across the world. Temujin was no longer just a survivor of hardship. He was becoming a force capable of shaping the destiny of entire nations, the formation of an empire. Temujin declares leadership. By his mid-20s, Temujin had already endured hunger, betrayal, and the harsh lessons of the steppe. But survival was only the first step. He now faced the greatest challenge of all, uniting the fractious Mongol tribes under a single banner. It was an ambition that no one had achieved in centuries, and many believed it impossible. Temujin began to consolidate power by rewarding loyalty and punishing treachery. He abandoned the old steppe custom of promoting leaders based solely on noble birth, instead elevating men of skill, bravery, and unwavering commitment. This meritocratic system inspired devotion from warriors across rival tribes, gradually building a formidable and cohesive force. Alliances were fragile and betrayal was ever present. Temujin's former blood brother, Jamuka, saw Temujin's rise as a threat to his own authority. Conflict was inevitable. In a decisive battle, Temujin defeated Jamuka's forces, sparing his life but demonstrating the futility of opposition. This victory not only strengthened Temujin's army, but also solidified his reputation as a leader who combined ruthlessness with strategic wisdom. Temujin also implemented strict laws, precursors to the Yassa Code that would later define the Mongol Empire. These laws ensured justice, regulated warfare, and maintained discipline among his followers. Order emerged from chaos, and respect for Temujin became synonymous with survival itself. By uniting the tribes, Temujin achieved what many thought impossible. He transformed the steppe from a place of constant conflict into a coordinated network of warriors bound by loyalty, fear of retribution, and shared vision. He was no longer a boy surviving the wilderness. He was the architect of a rising empire, the future Genghis Khan. The Mongolian steppe, once a land of scattered clans and endless feuds, began to feel the winds of change. The legend of Temujin was no longer just a story whispered around campfires, it was becoming history. The Mongol war machine, organization and strategy. Temujin's true genius lay not only in his courage or charisma, but in his revolutionary approach to warfare. The Mongol army was no longer a collection of scattered warriors. It became a disciplined, highly organized force capable of overwhelming any enemy on the steppe. He divided his army into units of tens, hundreds, thousands, and 10,000s, creating a flexible hierarchy that allowed for rapid communication and maneuverability. Every soldier was trained not only to fight, but also to ride, shoot, and survive in the harshest conditions imaginable. This cohesion was unprecedented among the nomadic tribes and became the foundation of his future conquests. Temujin's strategy relied heavily on mobility and psychological warfare. Cavalry units would strike with speed and precision, retreat to draw enemies into traps, and use feigned retreats to create panic and confusion. Intelligence networks and scouts provided crucial information about enemy movements, terrain, and resources. The combination of strict discipline, loyalty, and ingenuity made Temujin's forces nearly invincible. But the Mongol war machine was more than tactics and training. Temujin instilled in his followers a sense of purpose and unity. Merit, loyalty, and courage were rewarded, while betrayal or cowardice was swiftly punished. In a world where clans often fought each other for personal gain, Temujin's army became a brotherhood bound by trust, vision, and shared destiny. This system allowed Temujin to take on far larger and more powerful adversaries than any one tribe could have faced alone. It transformed the steppe from a chaotic landscape of scattered tribes into a stage where a single leader could dominate through strategy, discipline, and an unyielding will. By the time Temujin was ready to launch his campaigns beyond the Mongolian plains, he had created not just an army, but a war machine capable of reshaping the world. The conquest of China, Temujin's strategic campaigns. By the time Temujin set his sights on China, he had already transformed the Mongolian steppe into a formidable power base. His army, disciplined and united, moved with precision, striking fear into every clan and city-state that stood in his path. But China was a different challenge, a land of dense populations, fortified cities, and centuries-old empires. Conquest here would require more than cavalry charges. It would demand strategy, logistics, and an understanding of both diplomacy and terror. Temujin's campaigns in northern China began with careful reconnaissance. Scouts mapped rivers, mountains, and passes. Supply lines were planned meticulously to ensure that his fast-moving army could sustain itself far from home. Each city approached was evaluated not only for its defenses, but for the potential of alliances and local support. Temujin knew that subjugation without understanding would breed rebellion. Sieges became a hallmark of his campaigns. Using siege engines, psychological tactics, and relentless persistence, Temujin's forces could overcome even the strongest fortifications. But he also practiced pragmatism. Cities that surrendered peacefully were often spared, their inhabitants incorporated into his growing empire as allies rather than enemies. This calculated combination of fear and fairness allowed his influence to spread rapidly. Temujin's leadership shone brightest in moments of adversity. When ambushed or outnumbered, his forces adapted quickly, exploiting terrain and timing to turn potential defeats into victories. Discipline and loyalty were paramount. Every soldier knew his place, his task, and the consequence of failure. This cohesion, rare even among the most organized armies, made the Mongol campaigns nearly unstoppable. By the end of these campaigns, Temujin had not only demonstrated military brilliance, but had also solidified a model of governance that combined force, justice, and strategy. The steppe had prepared him for war, but China taught him the art of empire. The Khwarezm campaign, retribution and conquest. Temujin's ambitions now extended beyond the Mongolian plains. His eyes turned west, toward the vast and wealthy lands of the Khwarezmian Empire. What began as a mission of trade and diplomacy quickly escalated into one of the most infamous campaigns in his career. Betrayal, miscommunication, and political arrogance set the stage for a confrontation that would echo across centuries. The Khwarezmian Shah initially welcomed Temujin's envoys, but suspicion and fear soon led to tragedy. Temujin's trade caravan was attacked, and several envoys were executed, a violation of every steppe custom and a personal affront to the man who demanded respect above all. What had been intended as diplomacy became a declaration of war. Temujin responded with unprecedented speed and brutality. His forces, disciplined and relentless, swept across the Khwarezmian lands. Cities fell under siege, fortresses were breached, and armies that believed themselves secure were annihilated. Temujin's strategic genius, using mobility, psychological warfare, and careful reconnaissance, turned what could have been scattered skirmishes into a systematic conquest. Yet the campaign was not merely a demonstration of force. Temujin understood the importance of governance and order. Wherever he conquered, he integrated local populations, respected artisans and merchants, and maintained trade where possible. The destruction was precise, targeted at enemies, while opportunity and stability were extended to those who submitted willingly. This duality of fear and pragmatism would become a hallmark of his rule. The Khwarezm campaign showcased the full might of Temujin's leadership. It was a moment when the Mongol war machine demonstrated not just its ability to destroy, but its capacity to govern, adapt, and inspire loyalty across vast territories. The steppe-born boy had grown into a conqueror whose name would strike both terror and respect in the hearts of kings and commoners alike. By the time the dust settled over Khwarezm, Temujin's reputation as a master strategist and unstoppable force was firmly cemented. The world had begun to take notice. No empire, no matter how powerful, would underestimate the rising Genghis Khan. The Yassa Code. Law and order in the rising Mongol Empire. As Temujin consolidated power, he understood that uniting the tribes required more than loyalty in battle. It required laws, discipline, and a shared code of conduct. This realization led to the creation of the Yassa, a set of laws and decrees that would govern not only his army, but the emerging Mongol Empire itself. The Yassa was comprehensive, addressing everything from military discipline to social conduct. Theft, betrayal, and disobedience were punished swiftly, while loyalty, bravery, and service were rewarded. It established clear rules for leadership succession, property rights, and the treatment of conquered peoples. By creating a consistent legal framework, Temujin ensured that his growing empire could function efficiently even as it expanded across vast territories. Importantly, the Yassa, was as much about psychology as it was about law. It fostered unity among diverse clans and instilled fear in would-be traders. Discipline became a cultural expectation, and the Mongol army operated with unprecedented coordination. Soldiers knew the consequences of failure, yet also recognized the honor in service. This combination of fear, respect, and reward created a powerful system of governance and control. The code extended beyond the battlefield. Temujin enforced religious tolerance, protected trade routes, and maintained order among civilians. By establishing stability, he encouraged economic activity, cultural exchange, and loyalty among his subjects. The Yassa became the backbone of the empire, demonstrating that conquest alone was not enough. Lasting power required justice, organization, and vision. Through the Yassa, Temujin transformed the Mongol hordes from a collection of warring tribes into a unified, disciplined, and efficient empire. The foundations of what would become one of history's greatest empires were laid, not just by conquest, but by law and order. The final campaigns and Temujin's death. As Temujin aged, his empire stretched from the steppes of Mongolia to the edges of Central Asia. Yet even the greatest conqueror was not immune to the relentless passage of times. The final years of his life were marked by continued campaigns, the consolidation of territories, and the careful planning of succession to ensure the Mongol Empire would endure beyond his lifetime. Temujin faced rebellions, rivalries, and external threats, but his military genius remained undiminished. Each campaign was meticulously planned, supply lines secured, intelligence gathered, and strategies designed to maximize the efficiency of his forces. His ability to inspire loyalty, fear, and respect in equal measure made his armies nearly invincible even against overwhelming odds. Yet despite his achievements, Temujin's life remained one of constant motion and challenge. Exhaustion, wounds from past battles, and the immense burden of leadership took their toll. In 1227, during a campaign against the Western Saya, Temujin fell ill and passed away, his death shrouded in mystery and legend. Some say he died from injuries, others from illness, and some even whisper of betrayal. Whatever the cause, the world lost a man who had reshaped history. Temujin left behind an empire unprecedented in scale and organization. His sons and generals would carry forward his vision, expanding the Mongol Empire to its greatest extent. Tribes once divided and warring were united under a common banner, bound by the systems, strategies, and laws that Temujin had forged. Even in death, Temujin's influence persisted. The Mongol Empire would become one of the most powerful and far-reaching empires in human history, and his legacy as Genghis Khan, the unifier, the lawgiver, the conqueror, would echo for centuries. Legacy of Genghis Khan, the enduring empire. Temujin's life ended in 1227, but the empire he built did not. From the windswept steppes of Mongolia to the fertile valleys of Central Asia, the Mongol Empire stretched farther and wielded more influence than any nomadic power in history. Yet the true legacy of Genghis Khan was not measured only in lands conquered or enemies defeated. It was in the systems, strategies, and vision he left behind. The Mongol Empire thrived under the leadership of his sons and generals, who carried forward the principles Temujin had established. Meritocracy, discipline, and loyalty became the backbone of administration and military organization. Cities once divided by mistrust and conflict were connected by trade routes, communication networks, and a unified legal framework. Temujin had built more than an empire. He had built a functioning civilization capable of enduring centuries. Culturally, the Mongol Empire facilitated unprecedented exchange. Scholars, artisans, and merchants traveled across vast territories, bringing knowledge, technology, and ideas to lands previously isolated. Temujin's respect for talent and pragmatism created a climate where skill and intelligence could thrive, regardless of origin. In many ways, his empire became a bridge between East and West, shaping the course of global history. Temujin's military innovations continued to inspire generations. Cavalry tactics, intelligence networks, and strategic discipline influenced armies for centuries, but perhaps most important was his understanding of leadership. Power alone was fleeting. Respect, loyalty, and vision ensured longevity. He demonstrated that a leader who could unite diverse peoples under a common purpose could achieve the unimaginable. Even today, the shadow of Genghis Khan looms large. His name evokes both awe and fear. His story a reminder of human ambition, resilience, and ingenuity. The Mongol Empire may have fragmented, but the systems he put in place, the laws, the governance, the strategies, shaped the development of societies long after his death. Temüjin, the boy who survived the unforgiving steppe, had become a man whose influence transcended time and geography. In the end, Genghis Khan's legacy is a testament to what one individual can achieve against the odds. From the cold winds of Mongolia to the grand courts of conquered cities, his life reminds us that vision, courage, and determination can reshape the world. He was not just a conqueror. He was a lawgiver, a unifier, and a force of history itself.